Good morning, everybody. Brent Schlenker, Chief Learning Officer for Litmus.com. And this is L&D Talk. Today is Thursday, and that means, what does that mean, Anthony?
It's Things Thursday.
It's Internet of Things Thursday. Oh, and if I could just hit the button.
L&D Talk. We're talking learning and delivering our people. L&D Talk, right here on blab.im on the L&D Talk. We're on the Twitters too, talking with, not to you, talking about all the things you do. Yeah, on L&D Talk. Now give your warmest welcome to your L&D Talk host, Brent Schlenker,
And co-host Woohoo! Right. Hi, Anthony.
Morning.
It is a beautiful day for L&D Talk. For those of you that are watching on this video or the recording later, it's going to be a short one, so you don't have to sit through a whole hour, unless Anthony hangs out and stays longer. But I have to bail early. So while we try to get Ajay Pengakar in to talk maybe a little bit business about the Internet of Things, while he's trying to get his setup done and jumped in here, I posed a question to Anthony earlier, and he had an outstanding response. And so I will restate the question, and we'll start from there. So recently at our corporate event, C3 Calidus Cloud Connections, our CEO gave a presentation about how our systems are actually being made a part of the Internet of Things and how they're taking advantage of the Internet of Things. And it hadn't dawned on me that, I'd thought about it, but I didn't really realize how all enterprise applications and systems are getting connected to the Internet of Things. And one of the examples that they showed was how, for example, I think it was a pump of some sort for a manufacturing company. And that particular pump had sensors and everything on it, and it can sense when a part is about to go bad or when it's lived what they believe is its life cycle. And that particular message just gets sent to the ordering system, the sales system. It places the order itself. The system then sends that order off to a company that replaces it. The part gets delivered. A service person gets a request to go install the part, and then all of that happens with very, very, very little human intervention. And while that's all really cool, and while I think lots of cars have this built into it now, I believe, like when parts start to get old and all that, maybe not directly talking to the software, but you can kind of imagine that I think most technology probably will talk immediately to enterprise software. I don't know, maybe not. But what I got to thinking about was if this starts to happen because of the cloud, because of sensors, because of artificial intelligence, and basically the all-around Internet of Things concept, what does that mean for the work we do as training professionals? Not necessarily how do we use the tech, like things tech, like beacons and all of that in the training that we deliver, but how does the greater picture of the Internet of Things impact the work that we do negatively or positively? Anthony?
So the Internet of Things in a very broad sense, using the very generic sense, really can open up a lot of doors. One of the things that I kind of bristle at, though, is, and we're kind of starting to see conversations about this, is, for example, the Apple Watch came out, and immediately everyone, how can I use this to train? How can I use this to open my garage door? How can I use this to feed my cat? I don't know, whatever. And And to an extent, that's not a horrible thing. I mean, sometimes that's how I do things. I look at, okay, well, here's this thing. Well, what can I do with this? What can I build here that can illustrate how Internet of Things can help your problem? So there is some value to that. But really, realistically, what we need to do is look at our business processes, look at where we are, look at the industry, everything, and where are the gaps? Where do we need help? What can be done more efficiently? And then look at how these things fit in. So, another example is I have the ring I wear it's the NFC ring, which is produced by a company, oddly enough, called NFC Ring out of the UK. And it has two tags. On this side, there's a black tag you might kind of be able to
hold it down just a little bit because the label of your name covers it up that high.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, perfect. Good.
So you might be able to see the black one just from the just from the way the light reflects. But this one you should definitely be able to see. This is the other NFC tag, and you can see it's got the little antenna in there and everything. And I use it so when I go to conferences, one of my objections to conferences, I shouldn't say objections, one of the problems I have with conferences is it's an e-learning conference and I'm handing out paper business cards. That just bothers the hell out of me.
Yeah, trust me, I think we're all pretty frustrated with that. It's kind of like we're in e-learning professionals and we have conferences where we still stand up in front of people and deliver presentations for them.
Yeah, we use 1984 technology to take us to the future. So it really bothers me. So I looked at, okay, well, what can I do? And this was one of the options. Now, unfortunately, there are some issues here. On my phone, I have NFC turned on, so it's actually a problem when I'm talking on the phone. Sometimes it'll read the tag, and in the middle of a phone call, it'll take me to the NFC config page or things like that. But this all, I had a problem, and I looked at, okay, how can I solve it? All right, this can. You don't really want to look at this and say, oh, wow, this is awesome. Okay, how can I shoehorn this into whatever problems, you may have, or what problems can I create so I can make a solution? We've always heard that term too. It's a solution looking for a problem.
Indeed. Well, I think we run into that a lot, though. I mean, I don't even think it's just the Internet of Things. I think our industry has ever since technology came along, I think we've had that syndrome of, wow, cool, new shiny thing. How can we use it? And I don't think that's necessarily a bad way to start. But at some point, we do need to shift over to okay, now that we know a little bit more about it and we tried to figure it out, now maybe we can be a little bit wiser about, do we really need it? Just because we can doesn't mean we should sort of statement begins to apply.
Right. And again, but I think there are two efforts that have to happen in parallel because you do need. I don't consider myself a mad scientist. I'm more ill-tempered, maybe, slightly annoyed. I don't know that I go
crotchety old scientist.
Yeah, crotchety. Yeah, I don't know that I go full mad. Kids on my lawn kind of anger, maybe. But to your point, you do need that because you need those kind of crazy people who look at things and say, okay, what can I do with this? How can I make it? There are the people who climb Mount Everest because it's there, and we do need them because they inspire other things.
Right.
But from a corporate standpoint, and this is why I'm really hoping Ajay can get in here, is from a corporate standpoint, you need to be able to justify the expense and everything, so you have to already have a problem to solve.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting dilemma because those of us who do like to, well, I'm just going to say this instead of typing it. Ajay, Skype or something else that's open is probably hijacking your camera. So you may just, if you shut down every single application, reboot, and just open up your browser, I'll bet you'll jump right in. But Yeah. So I think that's where a little bit of the confusion happens, right? A lot of times in these conversations and that we're having here on Blab, and one of the reasons why I love doing this is that I really want us as an industry to come together and start understanding the conversations and having us all have a little bit better idea of when we talk about certain things, what perspectives we're coming at those conversations from. So, for example, what we're talking about here is those of us who do like to get out there, use the new shiny tools to figure out what they can do. Just because we're sharing some of those experiences and we're excited about it doesn't necessarily mean that we're all in on that technology and everything else needs to go away. And some people, I think, tend to get that sense. And I think I always hate to have to preempt everything I do with some sort of gigantic disclaimer, but I start to feel like I have to because people take it the wrong way. And so my continuing statement at this point is we have a toolbox. We have a massive spectrum of tools to choose from. Every time a new technology comes along, they seem to come along every single day. We're just adding to that toolbox. One thing in no way is replacing another. It might in certain circumstances, but in general, we're just adding to this giant toolbox of solutions that we have available to us. And so that is the difference, right? Once we have to kind of play around with these tools and use them for certain training issues and maybe fail or maybe succeed before anybody can even get a good idea of how to use them.
So that's something and oh God, I could go off for hours on this one. I don't know. I get the sense this is an American thing. Maybe I'm wrong, because I say that maybe it's just out of pure ignorance because I never hear people from Europe say this. I never hear people from Australia say this. I only hear Americans. There's this thought that you look at so many things. You look at changes to the education system, changes to the budget, changes to green energy. You look at solar power. Well, it can't power everything I need, so it's useless. What? How silly is that? And eventually that transforms to. I had a conversation with a young student a couple of weeks ago, and basically the conversation came down to, well, I can't paint the Mona Lisa, so I'm not an artist. Dude, there are miles and miles between those two benchmarks.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's how a lot of companies, well, can Internet of Things solve my problem? Well, no, but it starts you on a path.
Yeah.
Well, they don't want to do that. It either solves it or it's binary. It's all or nothing. And they don't have this rationale. And then 3 or 4 years down the line, and I'm not immune to this. I've done this myself. Where, right now, actually in the backyard, this week, we're having some trees planted. And I'm thinking, if I had done this 4 years ago when I wanted to, well, I'd have a bushel of apples by the end of the year. I'd have a bushel of peaches by the end of the year. Well, now it's going to be 3-4 years before I get that, because I waited because I'm a moron. So you get to that point where there is kind of that regret. And you look back at, geez, I really should have done this years ago. Well, now it's too late. And so you have to have that, and I don't know if it's a fear of failure. I don't know what that is. I don't understand.
No, you know what? I think a lot of it is the fear of failure, but I think we've been pre-programmed our industry, and I think other industries that haven't yet shifted over to sort of an agile way of thinking. Because I can remember in my early professional career at Intel, everything was there is a way, like literally they would say there is a way for you to get it right the first time. And it's so important to get it right the first time. And so you would have meetings, you would have project plans, you would have all sorts of these little models and methods for getting it perfect first time out. And you'd spend months and months and months and months and months, and you'd build this thing, whether it was software or hardware or whatever. And then boom, you would release it under the assumption that you've done all of the things right and it's perfect. And lo and behold, stuff was wrong and they didn't get something right. And And then everybody would go back and go, oh, the process is wrong. We got to define the process. We're going to have to pay more consultants and get it right. And so there's this old mindset of if you follow the processes, you'll nail it on the first try and you'll push it out. I think, those of us that have been paying attention have seen successful companies, software. The cloud offers us this ability to do this, and that is the iterative process, lean startups, lean manufacturing, all of that idea. And that completely changes the story. And I think, to your point, those folks who are still looking at that one-off, we have a problem, we want to fix the whole entire problem right now. It's a very old school way of looking at things, instead of just saying, how can we break down this giant problem into bits and pieces and just sort of pick them off one at a time and get to that final solution with mini solutions along the way?
Well, and I think it also gets to, and again, this is why I think this is maybe more American than a global problem. It also gets to the whole issue of immediate satisfaction, immediate gratification, whatever, versus a larger payoff if I wait.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to that.
Yeah, short-term goals versus long-term goals, and got to have it now, got to get it done now. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is very much an American sort of mentality. Yeah, patience is not a very big American virtue.
It's the American mentality, which obviously, of course, makes it the best.
Yes. Do we have any of our international folks online here? Let me look. No. Okay, we're good. You can say that, Anthony. It's all right. With tongue firmly planted in cheek. Yes. It's all good. It's all good. Well, hey, you know what? Go ahead.
I was going to say, but I do think that does need to be acknowledged, because the Internet of Things really, you look at the Internet of Things now is really where computers were back in the early 1980s. And I can remember, I remember as a kid having conversations, because I was a kid, I grew up with the Atari 2600. We had an Atari computer. We had the Epson Equity 1 Plus or whatever, the old 8086.
Good times.
To me, it just made sense to have computers. But I can remember talking to people who were working with mainframes, with the old, the thin client, the dumb terminals, the old grids or the VAX terminals, and they had no idea. You would ask them, okay, well, are you going to get computers? Why would I want a computer on my desk? I already have this thing that talks to a supercomputer that does everything I need. They had no concept of how computers would fit in. And now you look at it and the thought, and what's really funny before you go, because I think you'll find humor in this, we're having conversations now where in one of my other lives, we're deploying computers. And there's a rather stout debate happening. Well, do they really need a computer, or can we give them a thick terminal? Or actually, I guess it's a thin terminal. I guess this one is.
Yeah.
It's actually, 30 years on, and now we're having the arguments going the other way. Well, we don't need computers. We, look at Chromebooks. Look at now the thin terminals. We're actually moving away from computers.
Right. Yeah, I know. And it's, I think and a lot of that obviously has to do with the Internet of Things, right? Because a lot of what we used to need to do with computers now gets used more, is automated and doesn't actually need a huge terminal. Ajay, you finally made it.
Hey, yeah, guess what? Computer reboot. Fantastic. Thank you.
Hey, I'm an IT genius.
I know you are. Just, shut it down. Who cares when you got open the 1700 Windows you got open? Don't worry about it. Just shut it down, reboot.
It should work fine.
RJ wins an award of some kind for the single most dedicated blabber ever.
No, that's you, dude.
I am the co-host, and quite frankly, I would have said screw this by now.
Hey, I got nothing better to do with my life to talk with you guys. Come on, man.
We'll send you a ribbon in the mail. Little blue ribbon. Hey, I'm glad you jumped in because I do have to jump off. And so
Oh,
Anthony,
man,
I'm gonna let
Brent.
you keep running with this conversation. Ajay, you can talk business since we didn't get to talk about business yesterday. So you can talk about the business of the Internet of Things.
Okay, but I'm taking this personally, Brent, because you canceled on me yesterday, and then you cancel on me today. It's like,
I know, I'm sorry.
Is something I said?
Don't take it personally. It's been a crazy 3 weeks.
No worries.
So it's all good. Hey, you guys, thank you so much. It's great to see everybody. And I will see you tomorrow. Sam and I will be back tomorrow with Video Friday. So you guys have a great time. I'm going to jump off.
See you, Brent. Thanks.
See you, Brent.
Yeah, have fun.
So yeah, Ajay, you should actually take it a little more personally because he actually canceled on you yesterday by proxy.
I know.
He had to cancel on you. It was.
So hey, so I've been hearing. I mean, I'm out of this conversation. I heard bits and pieces, and I'm doing tech support here. So maybe you can just fill me in briefly where you guys were at with the IoT and business.
So kind of where we were is looking at where IoT is in business and finding a foothold, finding a place in not only in learning but in business in general. And so the comment I was making and Craig brings up a really good point in the chat. I'll get to in just 1 second. Is I kind of likened it to computers back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Remember, when computers first came out back then, everybody had the VT100 or VT. If you were like super cool, you had the VT320s.
Yeah.
Or you had the AS400 terminals, whatever. And even as a kid, I can remember talking to my father's boss years and years ago, hey, are you guys going to get computers? And like in the entire company, they had their mainframe, and then they had like 10 computers in the entire company. I said, well, are you going to get more so everybody has one? Well, why? I've got this thing. Why would I ever need a computer?
Yeah.
And from there, it went to everyone has one. I mean, I've got 3 on my desk right now.
Yeah.
Granted, I'm a nerd, but everybody has one. But now 30 years on, and actually, if anybody remembers, was it Multrix? The Multrix world?
I don't remember that one.
Idea. Aces, if you remember it. But now you look at, we're going back to that. We're going back to the terminals. You look at Chromebooks. You look at now people are putting those Citrix or those HP or those Microsoft Thin terminals on their desk. Or Greg brings up, you look at your smartphone. Yes, this has more computing power than what we put a man on the moon.
Yeah.
Put a man on the moon. But realistically, most of us don't use it that way. We use it on a thin terminal to access cloud-based services.
Yeah.
So
the
computer industry, I think IoT is where we were back in the 80s. I think it's kind of trying to define itself to do that.
Well, there's a slight difference in my opinion, Anthony. It's a slight difference in the sense that computers at least had, we were receptive to it in the sense that, from the 60s and onward it started. So, the mainframe started coming into play, the 70s started building up, and then, of course, we saw the influence of it between the late 70s and the 80s, like you said. But we were conditioned to start accepting it, even though, your boss may have said, well, we have the computers we need. We don't need any more. At least we were conditioned to say, yeah, maybe we can get more. With IoT, the issue is, I think, first of all, I don't think we grasp the power fully of what the web or the internet can do for us. And from the business perspective, I think they are even not sure because not that they don't want to get involved in this. I mean, IoT for the business is probably a miracle because, if you can be interconnected, 100% at any given point in time and reporting on everything within the business at any given point in time, anywhere in the world, why wouldn't you? I mean, I just saw a video yesterday about self-driving trucks. Did you see that? OTTO? Google self-driving trucks. The guy is, yeah. So he's riding, he's in the truck. He's just, taking notes, this truck driver. And the truck is just going on its merry way, this 18-wheeler, just, going barreling down the highway. And I'm like, okay, so this is already happening, not self-driving trucks, but, Walmart is doing sort of an IoT with its supply chain through its trucks. They know where their inventory is in every truck as we speak right now. So if in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Walmart is running low on tomatoes, the truck can cross dock with some other truck in the middle of I don't know, Kansas, to cross dock the inventory and then ship it all the way to Tulsa. Because one truck had it, the other one didn't. So that's IoT at its at one element of business. So from a business perspective, IoT is a great miracle. Going back to your point, Anthony, is that I just don't think we have a grasp, or we're not conditioned well enough to really understand what it can do. And of course, my tinfoil moment is, to what extent is invasion? Where's the limit of the invasion of privacy between employees, citizens, and people in general? So,
yeah. Well, like I said, I think it comes to so the earlier point you made. I think it comes back to we have to have a problem first. You can't. Somebody said something to me once that you can't solve a crossword that isn't there. Or something like you can't solve a puzzle that you don't have the pieces to. So I forget how. When they said it was really clever. So just imagine I said something really clever there.
Okay, I got it. Clever moment noted. Thank you.
But if you don't have, using the Walmart thing, I have heard, I don't know if this is true, but I had heard that Walmart and a couple others, they actually have it at a point that, let's say, you've got a truck on the road and a tornado hits Grand Island, Nebraska, because it's Nebraska, so why wouldn't it? They already know, okay, well, we've got this truck that's going to Kansas City that has bottled water on it. We're going to redirect that one.
Yep.
This one has sheets on it. Well, they don't really need sheets, so you go. This one has whatever. So they can, in real time, redirect these.
Yeah, no, they can, and that's why their competitors can't really compete against them, in the sense that Sears is about to go belly up, Kmart is in the graveyard, all their competitors can't. Even Target is struggling, in the sense that you can't compete with a competitor that's not only its core competency, meaning its core strength, advantage, it's its supply chain. They drive everything to that supply chain, and what, again, like IoT, people don't understand the supply chain. They've linked up IoT on steroids, in the sense that they have satellite communications virtually around the world for all their stores. To your point, they can redirect anything at any point in time. Let's go. I'm going to take it 2 steps further. One, they can analyze the turnover of products in every single product in the store, and analyze the profitability and the shelf profitability of each of those products. Now, take it as, and people are now probably on the chat, I'm not looking at it right now, but on chat saying, well, what the hell does that have to do with training? Well, guess what? If you look at IoT and you look at the connection into training, well, Walmart is, I won't go into detail on this, but Walmart's 95% of their training, and whatever you want to define training as, is focused on the supply chain side. So everything related to the supply chain, meaning the pricing for the accounting department, the inventory management for the inventory people, the supply chain management, so not supply chain management, but the supplier management training. So everything is focused related to supply chain. And that's a really interesting thing, because where am I going with this? Well, where am I going with this is that training can now play a role in real time with Walmart's supply chain to decide where the weaknesses are. And that's sort of the thing that's going on right now. And I think L&D has a problem trying to wrap their mind around that. And of course, and that's not to say that they're ignorant, it's just, I think we're all having trouble wrapping our mind around it. And IoT, first of all, IoT, I don't think we really understand what its power, what the power is that is available to us, because first of all, we're still testing things like our fridge reporting if we have enough milk in it. What do I care? If my fridge is telling me I need milk, I open my fridge, I can see I need milk. I don't, there's a conditioning process, and I think that's going to take, I don't know what the length of time is, but it's going to take probably, maybe a couple of years before we get assimilated in this, just like AI is coming about and all this wonderful stuff. Okay, rant over.
Well, but okay, so there are a couple of good points though. So the first thing that I do want to point out, kind of parallel to what you were saying, but then I want to come back to that, is you will often hear me talk about porn and gaming, and it's not because I like porn and gaming. I am a guy, so I guess I'm naturally proclivity there. But I will make the argument that almost any technology you have came from one of those two things. Better video cards, faster processors, better sound cards, faster internet connections. You don't need any of this to write a letter or process a spreadsheet. You do need it, for this. Blab, online video streaming. Guess where that came from, folks? And it wasn't to look at cat pictures. Well,
cat and porn.
Yes. Okay, all right, yeah. So cat, porn, and games, really, that's really where everything comes from. But the point I want to make there is, everything is begot from somewhere else, and the same thing's going to happen with learning. I mean, and I don't say this to criticize learning, but we don't really invent anything. We take other technologies and use it in inventive ways. So to use that supply chain example, we look at how that's being used there. That's its proving ground. That's where it proves its worth. And then we as instructional designers and instructional developers, we look at this and say, all right, well, this has proven itself. Now how can we work into that? Now, to make that link is the other example that you use quite often is Apple. And remember, I remember you talking about at Apple, they would monitor the calls that people would have, and they'd say, okay, well, Anthony's call times are too high, so we need to retrain him to be lower. Or Anthony's call times are too short, we need to train him, whatever. Well, now with that supply chain, you're bringing it into the physical, real world.
Yeah.
Now we can look at, hey, these people are lingering in aisle 4. Well, we really need that to we have too much traffic in aisle 4. We need to disperse that. Well, how do we do that? What do we need to do? And so some of that's going to come back to training, some of that's coming back to management. Maybe it's training the people when they put stock on the shelves and not putting it up right so people, aren't finding what they need. Whatever. To me, that's a physical manifestation of what you described with your experience with Apple.
Well, Anthony, when we talk about IoT, I think there's an opportunity. When I look at L&D, there's two things that happen in my mind. One is that I think we are too resistant sometimes to accept change, and that's a little bit. I don't know if it's the right term here to say, but I think it's a little bit ironic in the sense that we're resistant to changing our way of doing things when new tools and methodologies are coming out to allow us or facilitate it, as you pointed out, to make things better. And we call ourselves learning, and we're not willing to learn because learning also, for me, implies change. You have to learn something new. You have to do something new. And so when Internet of Things comes about, you have to be willing to say, well, how does this work for us? Where can I intervene? How can I be part of this? Or how can I leverage this new tool or this new methodology to my advantage? And again, you made the excellent point about, whatever company you want to pick, it doesn't really matter. The successful ones do this seamlessly. So we're picking big names here, Walmart, Apple. Somebody pointed out, I think Steve mentions Amazon. All these successful companies are not successful by accident. The first thing that they do realize is their systems have to be seamless. The systems have to be fully integrated and immersive. But it's not just the systems. What they realize that to make those systems work, and whatever you want to define their systems as, that's supply chain, customer support, whatever it is, their people are going to make it happen, and they invest a significant amount of money into building the skill sets of their people, and not just building it, but getting them to use those skill sets. Now, I know we're deviating a little bit from the Internet of Things, but when you look at IoT, we can see how we can recuperate as L&D or do a reconnaissance, if you want to use a military analogy, of what information we can capture and then sift through it and find the little pieces of gold and then apply those back into the system, to your point. So, hey, I'm sure, I don't know this for 100%, but you bring up a point. If there's a clog in aisle 4, why is everybody flocking to aisle 4 at Walmart in the grocery section? I wouldn't be surprised if Walmart knows this stuff, to be honest with you. It's a little scary to the extent that they know some of this stuff. But, to the point that they might say, well, that's because all the cookies and chips and the Pepsis are there, right? I mean, So let's diversify that aisle and make sure we can put the Pepsi next to another attractive product that's complementary and start turning it over. But what does that mean? You know, it's a very integrative. It's very what's the word I'm looking for? Anyways, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, you know, put the Pepsi next to something that's not necessarily attractive to try to attract them to do it.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, absolutely. No, so let me ask this though. From a business perspective, when do you go? Because you brought up another point that I hadn't gotten to yet, and that is sometimes you like I said, you have to have a problem first. You have to have a problem to solve.
Yep.
But in order to do that, you have to have that analytics.
Yep.
So, you know, from a business standpoint, how do you make that call? How do you get involved in, you know, hey, if we can do, you know, for example, Walmart, at least the Walmarts around me, I think all of them do, they have motion sensors on the freezers so that between certain hours, if nobody's walking in front of them, the lights turn off to save power.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me. In fact, I would actually be surprised if they didn't have a little thing up there that said, hey, this light was on from this time to this time. This, you know, so they're monitoring the traffic. And
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you make that call of when can I just look at sales of items versus direct monitoring of traffic? You know, like using your analogy before, well, I know Pepsi sells well, I know Oreo cookies sell very well, so I expect a lot of traffic in aisle number 3. I have no idea where they are. When is it warranted to go from that kind of inference to an actual sensor saying, hey, this is what's actually going on in this aisle?
Well, you know, I'm going to try to keep this a little light because the topic can get a little heavy right now. So if they're looking at the data, so the tool for them is, you know, they're driving data in. So all this analytics coming in, what we would call, you know, big data, comes into their computers, and they're getting reams of data coming out. Now they have to go, as I said before, they have to sift through this information. The business leaders have to sift through it and say, what do I need to know? What is relevant? And this goes back to a bit of a finance and accounting aspect. So you have departments who just analyze the financial performance metrics out of all of this. So, you know, the timer you said about the lights on and off, the reason they probably put those timers in those freezers is because finally the cost became pretty high. There was a variance there. We call it variance analysis. There was a variance there. They had a budget of what they want to spend, let's say, on electricity for those freezers. And it was insignificant for their stores, I mean, in Walmart's context. And then they said, well, you know, this variance is starting to trend upwards. And we need to figure out why this cost is going up. And so they looked at it and says, hey, our freezers shouldn't be on all the time, the lights or whatever it may be. And let's time it. And so they started timing it and they said, well, you know, if we take off 5 minutes or 2 minutes per freezer or whatever, you know, 10 seconds per freezer, they quantified this and they said, well, let's do that. Let's look, you know, let's look at, and what's the cost benefit savings out of it? And they do all these studies. And it sounds complicated, but it's with computers, like we said, it's pretty easy to do all these complex computations. But they come out at the end of the day and said, yeah, okay, now it makes sense to, you know, because they have to look at what does it cost to now install all these freezers with the sensors, have all these timers in place against the savings that they're going to bring back. If it's not going to outweigh if it's going to outweigh the savings, then we're not going to do it. So, sorry.
And that's over time.
Yes. So they see a trend analysis, they benchmark things, all this wonderful stuff. Now that again, you know, this is an example of where training doesn't have anything to do with it. You know, I mean, we always feel that we have to be involved or take credit for everything. I mean, I'm being a little facetious now, but whenever I talk to training and development people, with all due respect, you know, you don't need to take credit for everything, and you don't need to be involved in every single process that needs to be fixed. And if you can wrap your mind around that for a second, it doesn't mean they don't want you, just that, hey, you're not needed right now. Let's move on to something where they do need you. But there might be processes where they say, well, there's a lot of waste in those freezers. And they did this analysis, and that's because maybe the freezer doors stay open, or maybe whatever it may be, or the things are not stocked properly. Well, guess what? if they're doing this data analysis and waste metrics against financial waste and the food going to waste and all this kind of stuff, maybe there is a training issue. Maybe we don't have enough stock people or people going down to freezer aisles to verify where things are going, or how they should stock the shelves, or how the products should be placed in the freezer so they don't go to waste. That kind of stuff. That's all the training intervention stuff, right? So point being is that, yes, when it comes back to training in IoT, there's a lot of opportunities here. I just still think that we are very much at, well, I won't even say infancy. I think we're just being born at this point. We're just coming into the world, and we're trying to figure out what the world is about. And we haven't learned to cry, and we're just sort of shocked. And until we start wrapping our mind, and that's just not for training, I'm talking about for all of us. I mean, you're in the tech side a lot, AA, so you see this. I mean, I get overwhelmed when sometimes you say things to me, and I'm like, oh crap, above my pay grade. And I say that to you, right, Anthony? You're talking way above my pay grade. I'm not there yet. So I think there's a point where we will become assimilated. I mean, if you talked to me 30 years ago about having a phone that can do everything, or having a laptop in front of me and talking to you like this, I'd be, whoa, A, you're blowing my mind right now.
If we had tried to talk about that stuff 30 years ago, they would have put us away.
Yeah. But it's not, it's funny because it's not far from realism. I mean, I think one thing we can grasp with 30 years under our belt, or 35 years under a belt of computation power and technology, I think the human race right now can comprehend that, hey, yes, we can have things like self-driving cars and trucks. Hey, we can have artificial intelligence and a robot talking to us. Our prime minister is just in Japan right now and met that Honda robot, that Asimo, I think it's called. And he's having a conversation with this little Honda robot, this artificial intelligent robot. So we're not that far off, to say that, there might be our next leader in 50 years will be, automated. Mind you, I know where you're going with this. You're going to say, well, they're already automated right now. But or there's already artificial intelligence in the running right now at the presidential elections. But anyways.
No, there's nothing, there's a lot of artificial there. There's no intelligence. One thing I will say, because this does irk me, is I really hate the term artificial intelligence, because if something has intelligence, it is intelligent. The artificial part, to me, it's a grammar issue. The intelligence is real. It's the thing that's artificial. So artificial intelligence it breaks grammar rules for me.
Yeah, I hear you. And Steve, I just reading the chat very quickly. Steve was just saying, they have. I'm not sure if he's being sarcastic or he's being serious here. But he says, what is it? Larger the company. You see that the text says lower the change, except that Amazon has training. Well, I'm going to answer the last question. Amazon does have training, but Amazon, again, just like all these other companies, are very targeted. Where most companies I tend to go into are very shotgun approach. Let's just train everybody and on anything and everywhere at any time. These companies are, and I hate to use gun analogies, but they're very snipered. I mean, they're very targeted. They, like you said, Anthony, they identify a problem. So when you get to IoT, they can really identify a problem. And then they say, okay, what needs to be solved here? What does Ajay need to know to do his job better? And it's not Ajay and Anthony. Anthony's already doing it well. Let's look at Ajay. And so they're very snipered in their approach, and they don't have a lot of waste. And most of the time, it's funny because I sort of giggle when we start talking about real-time L&D or what's the other one? Micro-learning or gamification. And I'm like, if you talk to some of these companies, they do real-time learning. They do micro-learning. They do all these things already. And because when you talk to Amazon, they don't have time to waste.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard horror stories of Amazon. I've heard good stories of Amazon. But what I've heard, and both have in common, is that they're under a lot of pressure to make things happen. So learning is not a casual intervention. Let's do an e-learning course, and you can sit before your computer for 8 hours and learn it. That would not fly at Amazon. That's not something that would happen. It would be like, you want to do e-learning? Make sure it's like a chip implanted in the back of Ajay's brain, so when he's walking around the warehouse, he can learn it right away. Yeah. I'm being extreme and being a little smart here, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Hey, when's the point that we're going to get the Internet of Things with a chip in our mind, like the Matrix, and we can download any program we want and learn anything we want at any given point in time?
So I'm not going to take the time to look for it now. Because, although now that I've said that, I'm sure it would be the first thing on Google that I find. I have read, though, some stories. Now, I'm a data guy. I'm an economist at heart. So, as some of you know, I've had some health issues over the last couple of years. I've got high blood pressure. I've got that Wolfram-Brimley disease. Some other I'm overweight. So, working out, I'm that guy that when I walk, I had the O2 sensor on my finger. I had the heart rate monitor. I had, and I've got on my phone, I've got Runtastic, so I'm marking how many steps I'm taking, how far I'm walking, how many calories, all this stuff, right? There is a gentleman who, actually, I think he's out of Canada. I could be wrong on that, though, where he actually embedded all of this stuff. So he has a direct heart monitor in his chest. He has all this equipment.
I've heard of that, yeah.
Into his arm, and it all reports back to his phone. So that's already happened. Now, the mental part, we're not quite there yet, but there is, I know it was done with cats, and there is at least 2 human trials where they've actually, the person was blind, the eyeballs were damaged, but the nerve was still good. The ocular nerve was still good. They were able to build an interface so that the person can see. And I don't say this as a joke. I mean this in all genuineness and all sincerity. I do mean this. I don't mean to make light of these people's situation. But basically, they see in Nintendo NES graphics. They see in 8-bit.
It's like all those numbers in the Matrix that come down?
Well, no. Well, they see blocks.
Okay, the blocks, okay.
Like if I were, it's like if you were to take a picture of yourself and convert it to an 8-bit picture, with all the big.
Yeah.
That's how they see the world, because that's where the technology was as far as the CMOS scanner that's in their eye and the interface to their ocular nerve. They couldn't get a higher resolution.
Yeah.
But I mean, you think about it, that is still from blind to 8-bit graphics is freaking awesome.
And that's just a start, right? I mean, you think about what technology can do for us, but again, there's going to be a whole debate about ethical issues around it, right? I mean, there's going to be, where is that line? I mean, I don't think Steve meant to say this, but I think he's being a little facetious, and I'm not sure I support the comment, but he says babies will have their SS number and other stuff embedded at birth. I guess the point he's trying to make is that, we go back to World War II where all these prisoners were tagged in Germany and being tracked, right?
Actually, and I'm sure somebody in the chat's going to find this. I want to say Sweden. There are a couple of companies where they are tagging all of their employees with the same chip that they put in your dog. Yeah,
one of our colleagues posted that, and I said, "Would you do this?" And I said, "No way." Like, I mean, seriously, I'd quit before I have anything tagged on me. And I'm not being paranoid. I mean, to me, I'm very private with my private life. And not because I don't like to share, it's just I just don't want it out there. I mean, there's so many things going on. I don't need, it's like this, people, the iWatch and the Fitbits, or the iWatch is the one that bothers me a little the most. I love the technology. I love the product. And people think I'm really a dinosaur when I start talking about this. I do love what Apple and all these companies are trying to do. But at the end of the day, I don't need my health information floating around in the inner space with Apple deciding who they want to sell it to. Because at the end of the day, they may want to tell you they're not selling it, but guess what? All these companies have to make money somehow, and they're finding easy ways to make money, and they're selling it to the highest bidders. And so your data, your and my high blood pressure counts, and how many walks, suddenly we get ads from Reebok or Nike on our Facebook because Apple sold data to them, and it's fed back through Facebook that Ajay likes to do a lot of walks, and guess what? Here's a great shoes for walking. I don't need that. I don't need you to target me and cattle me. That's my issue right now.
Well, that's everybody talks about. Google offers Google Voice, which I use. They have Google Mail, which I use. They have Google Hangouts, which I use. but let's be clear, you're the product.
Yes. Facebook, people forget they're the product.
Yeah. And I definitely hear you around IoT. Once we have all these sensors, it becomes, all right, well, now we have all this data available. What are we going to do with it? And who's going to be doing it?
Yep. Sam made a good point, too. He says, if you have a cell phone from your company, you've been tagged. Absolutely. I said that about Sam. I said that about OnStar. When OnStar first came out in General Motors cars, I turned to my wife the first time I saw the commercial. No lie. I said to her, and she looked at me. The same thought was going through her head. She goes, "We just got tagged. They know where we are any point on North America." I know you don't like to drive to Europe, Anthony. You have issues with that. But if you decide to drive to Europe, they can tag you're driving to Europe from.
Well, I think the water would attenuate the signal.
Well, a little bit, yeah. But hold your breath.
When I'm 20,000 leagues under the sea, I think,
Yeah, but when General Motors is tracking your cars, and, that's not GM. I'm just not accusing GM here, but,
Chevy has something, and Hyundai has something.
Yeah. So you are tagged. I mean, my GPS system in my car, although I love having a GPS in the car, and I don't drive into lakes because it tells me to. Yeah, you heard about that story, the lady who drove into Lake Huron or whatever it was, because she goes, the GPS told me to keep going straight. Lady, did you not see the lake in front of you? And when the water got up to your windowsill, did you not think about backing up? But anyways, some common sense is involved here. But that being said, the GPS is a tracking device too. I mean, and if you want to be really, paranoid and schizophrenic about this, you can say, and you're to govern conspiracies. Guess what? You are tagged. But the point being is that I know governments are not that smart to do that kind of stuff. We love to watch the movies that they do this kind of stuff, but I don't think governments are really that smart. Somebody once said on a radio interview, there was a senator from the U.S. being interviewed here in Montreal on the radio, and the host said, "Are people like Frank Underwood in House of Cards?" And the senator turned and says, "Really? If we were as smart as Frank Underwood, things would get done in Washington." So I don't think governments are really that smart to be able to take advantage of this information. However, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, and that's the other scary part of IoT.
Well, and just to underscore that, is I still remember the trial of Kevin Mitnick, where military intelligence professionals claimed. And those of you who don't know who Kevin Mitnick is, Google him. It's a brilliant. He wrote the book Ghost in the Wires, which I can't read. But they claimed he could actually pick up a payphone, dial, and whistle into the phone the nuclear launch codes to start World War III. U.S. military. At which point, now I've heard various versions of this. It's not mentioned in the book, but at which point there is a version of the story where I don't know if it was the judge or if it was somebody after asked him, wouldn't you secure our nuclear missiles a little bit? Like, isn't that more an indictment against you than this excellent hacker? Like, isn't that maybe kind of your fault? But
well, the demise of the Soviet Union, right, in the late 80s, they just left stranded all these nuclear warheads all across the country in silos, just sitting there for anybody to take. So
I see Paul is heading out. Paul, safe travels, good flight.
But no, I mean, I think we're a little diverged the track. I think we just made this a little bit of a chat session about our paranoias, or maybe I did. I'm sorry, Brent. Please accept my apologies. But listen, I think that if you wanted to just maybe tie this with a little bow here, here's my final thought about IoT. I think it's a fantastic thing that we can interconnect all the information in the world and have it in real time and report to us what we need to know. And that's the key. The underlying thing here is report what we need to know. Again, like I don't need to know how much milk is left in my fridge. I'm not going to spend $5,000 on a Samsung fridge to tell me that. But if something told me, say in the workplace, if I'm in L&D and my company is focused on a certain area of business, and they decide to leverage some sort of IoT systems in place to communicate all this information, then guess what I'm doing as the L&D leader? I am going to be figuring out how where my point of interventions are going to be into that data, so I can make a difference and ensure those people have the right knowledge to apply to make a difference in business. And really, and you don't need IoT to do that, by the way, my dear friends in L&D. You need to be able to do that, period. And that's my 2 cents worth, Anthony.
Well, and I'll take the step before is you have to know and understand the problem you're trying to solve. You have to know how to ask that question in order to get the answer you need.
Yeah.
Or any of it. Yes.
Well, and not to, I agree with you, Anthony, so please don't take this as contradicting you in any way. I do agree with you 100%. But sometimes we need, so when we wait for problems, we always say we're being reactionary because a problem happens and then we act. What I'm trying to promote to L&D is like, don't wait for the problem to happen. Go look for ways to improve, which is a different mindset altogether. And so, yes, I think you're right. When you talk about problems happening, that's when real change happens, because as the more serious the problem, the more change takes place. And if problems don't happen, we become, as a society, we become very complacent, and we accept the way things are working. But I think we need, an L&D anyways, for that matter, we need to be proactive. We need to find a way to not wait for the problems to happen, but find a way to continuously improve. And that's, just some thoughts. I don't know.
I think we're tripping over semantics here, because to me,
probably
that's still a problem. I just see the problem before it becomes a problem.
Okay.
But, I still have to have that thing to solve. You know what I mean? I still have to have that need.
You're right.
I need to see it coming. So I think we're tripping over timing.
Yeah.
I think we're saying the same thing. We're just timing it different.
We look alike. We think alike. There we go.
You know what's sad is I actually remember the rest of that song, and I'm not singing it.
Go Packers. Okay.
But that's right.
Wow, this is pretty cool. I didn't expect to jump in today, but yeah.
But we're thrilled that you did. So it is the top of the hour. Mr. Ajay Pangakar, Workplace Revolutionary. Where can people find you?
Well, the tag on my Blab here is wrong. I've been chasing Blab to change it. It's at Biz Learning Dude, B-I-Z. There's the Canadian coming out. B-I-Z Learning D-U-D-E. And you can come to my blog at blog.centralknowledge.com. And by the way, I just want to put a little promo out there. I'm going to be at Learning Dev Camp in a few weeks in June. I know Anthony is a big fan and a supporter, and of course I think was involved or is involved in some form of Learning Dev Camp in Utah. So supporting my buddies and Nick and Jason and all that. And Utah in June, I think June 21st, 22nd. Come on down, come see us. What I wanted to propose is I want to try something. Brent inspired me, Anthony, to do I want to do a sort of an L&D chat like he does, but on the road. I want to do one at LDC. And I was going to pitch to Brent to say do an L&D talk on the road, or a road show, and do something down there with guests and, bring in speakers, bring in participants to talk about their experiences.
I think that's a great idea. I would really, because I'm actually kind of thinking about the same thing now. I'm at Focus on Learn in the first half of June in Austin, Texas, June 5th through the 10th, which is why I'm not at LDC this year. I kind of have to choose between the two. And that's one of these, and here again, I think LD professionals, I would love to see. I love to see these Skype discussions, or these Hangouts where people are at the conference talking about. The tweets are good. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
This is who I've talked to today. These are the conversations I had in the hallway.
Here's what I've noticed, kind of thing. Here's yeah. So let's do this. Let's talk to Brent and let's do a L&D. Let's do LD Talk Roadshow. We'll brand it that way, so it doesn't step on Brent's toes on this one, and that way we'll have like a derivative where speakers on the road, they can do a blab.
Absolutely, and I think it really benefits those of us who can't be there.
Exactly. Cool. Thanks, Anthony. You've been great as usual.
Ajay, thanks for joining. My name's Anthony Altieri. I am the idiot, the instructional developer for the Internet of Things. As I just said, I will be at Focus on Learning. I will be at the XAPI camp, where I will be talking about Internet of Things and using XAPI. with the Internet of Things to do cool things and cool stuff. I'm on the Twitters. You can find me, well, in my picture, it's up here. It might be over there for you, I don't know. At AA_Altieri on the Twitters. And you can always find us here, right here, at Brent Schlenker's L&D Talk at blab.im/bschlenker every day at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, I believe, if I'm doing my math correctly. And with that, we will see you folks tomorrow. Thanks for joining.
Bye, guys.